Hey everyone, and welcome back for another design cut session. And I can't think of anyone better to kick off this wonderful event than our friend Kladi from Printmysoul. Hey Kladi.
Hi Tom. Thank you so much for having me. It's super honored to be here.
Well, thank you, and I'm so glad we could make this happen. We connected a little while back, and I think we both have similarly crazy busy schedules. So I really do appreciate your time joining us today, and I know you have so much to share.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that, when you have a fellow busy people, we don't take it personal because we know that we're just like passionate about what we do. So it just tends to take over our lives. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining. I can see a very active chat. That's super cool.
And today, Kladi, you're teaching a session all around InDesign, which I'm pretty pumped for because I'm not going to lie, I don't think we've done enough of them. And we've covered a lot of Photoshop, a lot of Illustrator. InDesign has been a little bit neglected, but it's a hell of a piece of software, and we know a lot of our community use it. So I'm so glad you're kicking off the first session talking about InDesign.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that InDesign deserves a lot of love. The team is doing some amazing progress with the software itself, is opening up more and more to the community of independent publisher. At the beginning was an app that it was mainly for formal professional publishers, but right now, especially with today we're going to mainly talk about book layout, so print design. I've seen in the chat that the link was shared, and the reason why this link is important is that's where you can access the starter file to join in the session. So if you click on the Get Started File link, you'll be taken into this Dropbox shared folder where you can find some images, a Word document with some text that is from my book. So copyright free, I wrote it, I'm free to share it with everybody. And of course, the starter file, which is an InDesign file. Now, you can use that as a template. You can use that if you want to have a quick jump start, so you can perhaps just listen to the first steps and then right away start working to the more complex stuff. Or you can just jump into InDesign and we can create everything from scratch. So it's not a requirement to in order to follow up or to create what we're creating to start from that starter file, although it's there for you to use. And
Kladi, super quick, do you mind clicking hide at the very bottom of your screen?
Boop.
Amazing. Thank you.
And let's see why InDesign went away.
Yeah, that's weird. There we go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Fantastic. And I'm going to make this white screen as well. Beautiful. So as Tom said, I'm probably going to build up in terms of practice. I've seen that there were different sort of level, lots of love for InDesign, which is fantastic. But I'm going to start from the very basics. And I promised myself that I was going to have my book here with me, which of course I didn't, but I'm just going to use any sort of notebook just to talk about a little bit the final look and feel of the page. So we're going to just get started from building a new document from the very, very basic. So if you know InDesign already, the place to do that is to create new, which is the big pill buttons on the left. And then in this case, because we are building a document for print, we're going to set our intent for print. The intent is here, and of course, depending on what you're working on, allows you to change the setting in one click. So you can see that if we select for web, the units change into pixels, and we have a different sort of grid. And if we head into print, we go back into a different units. Of course, the color mode changes from RGB to CMYK, being CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, the color space that we use in printing. And the reason why we want to head to print is so we can jump into this detail. InDesign does the job for us, so we don't have to worry. So if we set our intent for print, we already know that we're working in CMYK and that our resolution is 300 dpi, which is the standard resolution that is required for print. Fantastic. So now we can have a look at the presets details. You can see that there are different presets here inside the new document page. You can also view more presets by clicking on View All Presets. And usually when I produce a printed document nowadays, I tend to stay on an A5 formats. Of course, depending on the purpose. If we're talking about a book or a leaflet or something that people will have to require a certain length of time in order to access the content, I will usually envision something that is a pocket or purse friendly, something that you can easily carry in your hand or under your arm, and anything above A5 start to get a little bit on the way. So that's why I'll go ahead and select A5, which brings it to a standard size of a half of a normal letter page of 848 millimeters by 210. Then here we want to look at the orientation of the page, and I'm going to work with a portrait mode, which is the vertical side. Totally up to you. Again, you can follow, mix and match, and create your own styles. I always get very, very inspired about what everyone does when follows my demos or my tutorials. So again, I'm going to go with a straight, so portrait mode. And what we want to really pay attention on, I'm going to zoom in so you can really see this little fella here, is the facing pages. And it's already ticked, but let's have a look at why we want to tick it and why not, and what does it change in these presets when we tick facing pages. So of course, facing pages, it's something that related of having two pages that face each other. So here I'm going to share my book with my notes. And facing pages allow us to have a layout with one page sitting next to the other. But let's have a look at why it's important to tick it, not only for the when we're going to open that design, but most importantly, the margin setup changes here and help us to understand what is left and what is right. Because if we untick facing pages, when we talk about margin, which is the white area that gives breathing space to the document, we see a top, bottom, left, and right. And that's happened when we have a normal white page. So we have the top, bottom, and left and right space. When we tick to facing pages, so we are already envisioning a layout that requires a spine, so an inside, which usually what happens with publication or anything that folds. We want to change and really take care of this inside margin. So let me show you real quick again. Unticking is left and right over here. And when we click facing pages, it becomes inside and outside. So when we're working on a book layout, we want to make sure that we unlock these little settings here, because we want to be very mindful in the way that we think and strategize our book. So in terms of top margin, a good habit is to give a nice breathing space of at least 20 millimeters. And to the bottom, you can keep it to 20 for the time being, and then I'm gonna show a little trick once we enter the document. And outside, majority of rules in publication is that you can allow a little bit more space. So perhaps you can keep it to 18 or 16 as well. I like to keep it nice and organized in terms of having sort of symmetry and balance in the page. So I'm going to choose an outside margin of 20. For the inside margin, though, that's where we really want to be mindful. And that's why InDesign is so cool that show us this inside. So those are sticky notes. So you can actually see that the inside margin goes inside the binding. So we're going to lose some of that space inside the binding of the book. And we want to really make sure that no text nor image falls in that area. And that's why we are going to allow an extra 5 millimeter in this case. So the inside margin is going to set to 25 millimeters. Now I'm going to zoom out.
Kladi, can I ask a quick question about this?
Sure.
Is there a good formula that's recommended? Because people might be doing different sized documents, and therefore I guess the margin would scale with that. So is it like, should the margin always be about 10% or something like that?
I don't use percentage in particular, Tom. The most important thing here is the purpose. So that's something that I learned actually when I was working for the printer. I used to take a lot of phone calls to help people with their documents there. And the keyword there is fit for purpose. It's totally up to the purpose of the document. The general rule is that there is an increment between the size of the page and the size of the document. So of course, if you have a smaller document, you have smaller margins. And if you have a bigger document, you have an increment, so bigger margin, let's say 25 or 30 for an A4. Although, Tom, the reason why I say it's fit for purpose is that A5 is very often used for invitation, save the dates. And in this case, we have a huge margin because we really want to the content that is usually sits at the very center of the page to be in evidence and to have a very dramatic contrast between the content of the save the date, which is, of course, is the location and the date and the time and the address, to the white space. So again, I really I follow the Gestalt theory, which is a psychological rule of perception based on proximity. So the closer elements are together, the more you perceive it at the same time. The more distance you create, in this case with the margin, with the white space, the more dramatic effect you have and the more separation you have within the element. So I like to think in more of reasoning. I'm a big believer into reasoning rather than rules. So that's why I don't want to give you like a perfect number.
No, I think that's the perfect answer, though. Rules are made to be broken. Make it
absolutely. Absolutely. And what I've done here in the meantime is to click on preview. So here we can start to have a little look of what our page is looking like while we build it, although we haven't committed to anything. So, that gives you an idea what that 20 margin is looking like. Fantastic. So we can start to move on. And before we get started and create the file, there are two more things that we want to do. One, when we're talking about printing, we want to take in consideration bleeds. And I'm going to start to add them first. And the standard for printing is 3 millimeters. And I'm going to show you where they are first. And then we're going to talk about why they're so important. So I'm going to, again, zoom in into my design. And I'm going to move this new document out of the way so we can have a look at the structure of the page so far. So this black line over here is the actual area of the A5 document. So that's the size, contains the size of the document that we're going to print. This red little line is the bleed line. This is an area that sits outside the printed page and allows the printer to have a small margin of error when printing your document. So I'm going to bring back my little notebook again. So let's imagine that that's the final size of the document. And then we have perhaps an image or a background, something that spills out, or even text, if you want to do something really cool with text that spills out outside the margin. Now, what happens if the printer, because imagine this big guillotine, this machine that cuts paper, they don't cut one paper at a time. They cut thousands and thousands of big sheets of paper, so they might slide a little bit. So there is a margin of error that is of 3 millimeters. What happens if the printer cuts a little bit higher up? Well, you're going to have a very ugly result with a white margin, and your design will just break there. So the mistake is going to be very, very evident. So we prevent this effect by stretching and giving a little bit of an extra space. So we allow the printer to make that mistake, and the design is not going to be affected by this error, and nobody really is going to know. I usually don't realize it as well because we're talking about millimeters, and you can notice it only when there is that contrast with the white page. So using the bleed is going to save from this possible error when printing. And at the end, this magenta line is the margin. So that's where the content area, the safe area for our content. Again, a very minimum, that's probably the only rule that I will give in terms of number. The very minimum that I will suggest is a 7 millimeter. That's the safe area. You don't want to go beyond the safe area because, again, we want to talk about 3 millimeters in and out of the documents. That's where your words can be chopped as well, can be too close to the margin. So you don't want to make sure that your content doesn't get cut off when printing the paper. Right, so the very last thing that we're left to do is to name our document and save it, which is something that I don't do very often myself. So it's nice to have this nice reminder. I'm going to call it design layout. And you can go ahead and click on create. Also, if you wish to use this as a preset yourself that you created, you can click on this little arrow here next to the name in order to create a new preset. And that will save under the Save tab here on the document. In this case, I'm just going to click on create. And here we are. We started with our page. Now, of course, we're going to be needing one or more pages to create our little booklet. And again, see the facing pages. You can access your page and document settings at any time by heading under File and Document Setup. Of course, there is also a shortcut, which is Option Command P, that opens the Document Setup window. And here we can change the size of the document. We can change the margin. So everything that we've done so far remain editable, included the bleed. Here it is. So if you forget and you created a document, you don't have to close it and start again. You can just implement it here. In this case, all I have to implement is the number of pages. So I'm just going to start with 5. Again, we always have the little option of previewing, which allow us to see anything that we are doing any changes before committing. Then click on OK when you're happy with your changes. Fantastic. So we have our document done. Command S to save, Control S to save it, just to make sure that we did actually save it somewhere into our machine. and it doesn't crash it and leave us behind. And now if your workspace looks a little bit different from mine, so what I was gonna mention is that if your workspace looks different than mine, is because I've just moved around. I was practicing, and so I had a lot of fun here with the little panels. If you want to bring it and reset it back to 0, you can head here under the word essential at the very top right of your page, click on a down pointing arrow, and you can reset essential. So if you just open InDesign, that's how the standard workspace looks like. If you move around panels, or if you bring up other panels, which are they all live under the window menu and they're there ready for you to start to play with them. Let's say I'm just going to make an example. I'm going to bring out the libraries and bring up some other maybe a text wrap, different one that we may use. The cool stuff is that if you start to use panels and you like a particular setup for your document, and you don't want to waste time over and over again to bring the workspace to your ideal layout, what you can do is, and that's a little bit of a meta, is a layout in the layout in design. You can actually save the workspace and personalize it, again, by going under this little down pointing arrow and click on new workspace. In order to create a new workspace, and I'm just going to call this one test, because I just brought some random panel just for the example, and you can capture the panel location and the customizations, and then click on OK. And anytime that you want to swap between essential or any other of these wonderful presets, all you have to do is to click on reset to head back to essential, or if you want to head back to our test, here it is, simply click it on test and here you are. And again, if you move stuff around, all you have to do is to go back and reset whatever is the name of your personalized workspace in order to get started. Fantastic. I'm going to move on the essential, just because I think that that's the standard and probably everyone is a little bit more comfortable if following along, because that's the standard that InDesign provides. And the very first panel that we want to head on is our pages panel. So we're going to start to style our pages. Now, we can see here a little preview all the pages. So when you head to the pages panel, and again, if for whatever reason you cannot find the pages panel, you'll find it under window, and here it is, pages. Mine is ticked, which means that is actually out here into my workspace. So what we can observe here is the first section, which is dedicated to the master pages, which are a sort of background that we can use as a fixed design to underlay and to create some structure in our design. And it comes so handy, especially when creating magazine or book publications, because it allows to repropose the same layout and apply to all different pages. As you can see, this is called A master, and we can note a little A on top of our pages, which stands for the A master is being applied. So let's go and see how this one affects our pages. Double click on one of the two pages in order to start and enter your master page. And we can start to modify a little bit starting from the grid. Now, I'm a big fan of grids, and I wanted to show a little bit how and why once you get a little bit of practice with the grid, it's something that becomes super, super useful when distributing content. I'm going to go ahead under layout and select create guides. And remember, I am still sitting into my master page. And for this page in particular, that's my sort of usual layout. And that's, again, completely personal, completely fit for purpose. The only thing that I will advise is not to use, unless you need it, a square format. So don't use the same number in repetition. And I usually have an odd number on one side, just so it just kind of give it a little bit more of balance. And that's, of course, the number of rows and number of columns. And again, make sure that you hit on preview just in case you don't see these little guides appearing there. Also, you want to make sure that you fit it to margin and not to page, so we can take in consideration our inside margin that is of a different size, of course, rather than the page itself, in order to have a balanced layout. You can also come and redo this anytime. Just make sure to click on remove existing ruler guides if you want to override the previous setting. And something else that we haven't changed yet is the gutter. And I'm going to zoom in so you can really see the effect on the gutter here. It's set to 5 millimeters. For this sort of document, I'm going to make it a little bit less, as 3 millimeters. And for those of you who don't know what the gutter is, you can see it here, is the space in between two columns, or in this case, two rows. I'm going to change it for the columns as well, which will allow you some breathing space within the text. So you can literally trust now this space whenever you create your document, so you can give it some breathing space within the content. But we're going to look in just a second to visually what that means. I'm going to click on OK in order to accept the changes. And then I'm going to go ahead under my window panel to bring up my layers. Layers are not very much summoned usually in InDesign. While I found them super, super useful. If you're familiar with Illustrator or Photoshop as well, orders of layers matters also in InDesign. Top layer is going to show up on top of bottom layers, and they can basically are folders that contains our text and graphics. So all our contents sits in layers. As you can see, we already have a base layer. I'm going to double click and call it grid, because that's where we just placed our grids. And then we can click on create a new layer in order to create a further layer. As in every Creative Cloud document, there is always at least one layer, because we need at least one folder to contain our document. So I'm going to create now this a second layer, and I'm going to name it layout, because that's where we're going to start to build our block of layout. So that's exactly we understand why it's so important to create this grid. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the rectangle tool from the tool menu, and I'm going to double click on the control on the fill control, just to make sure that we have a color into our shape. And again, it doesn't really matter. It's an RGB color. You can add a CMYK color. It doesn't really matter for this purpose, because this is just a guideline. So even the color doesn't matter. It's just there for you to show what the layout is all about. I just want to show you here, how do I leverage this grid? So I'm going to start to build blocks by using the rectangle. Where do I know that my content is going to go like? So of course, the first one is usually for the title or heading. And then here I can use this space to add our images. And that's super useful when you are discussing maybe with your team, with your clients. That's a great way to sort of have an understanding, because many people, I think that's, I don't know about you, Tom, but when I deal with clients or other designer, everyone is in their own head and mind, and it's so hard to understand, sometimes what the other person means. So I think that having a visual guide like that just sort of gives an idea, or like, that's where I want an image, that's where I want a text, and you can actually start to point out and refer to different space, because the grid is beautiful, and I think that you can project into the grid whatever layout you envision, but it's important to share with other people as well.
I mean, it's the equivalent of web designers have wireframes to show clients to get sign-off at the early phases, right?
Exactly the same thing. And that perhaps, you don't necessarily need to do that. And again, all I'm doing here is clicking on Option, which is Alt on Windows, in order to create a copy of the rectangle, and then clicking on the drag-in box in order to resize it. If you want to resize it proportionally, you can hold Shift, but in this case, I just want to free transform it just like so. So that's what I will do if I would have talked with my team, or with a different sort of, my clients or other director that I'm working with, just to show the first stage of a layout. And that sends out that I'm going to have a full bleed image here. I don't necessarily need that, so I'm just going to delete it just because it's just a simple full page. All we're really interested here in the main layout. And the beauty of having on a separate layer is that we can turn that off at any time, just like so. So it's there for a purpose of guidance and remind us what we want to do. And if you are beginning, and if you really want to explore it out, my suggestion is to grab the little stroke and line tool and build the actual grid and print it out and go with your pen and really have a play. Or if you want to do it digitally, just keep doing it here and have a play with these boxes as many times as you want, because I think it's really, really cool to explore different ideas. I'm going to stick with that just for the purpose of time here and for our content. Fantastic. So another thing before we move out of our master pages is, as you can see right away, the master is being applied to all the pages. And we're going to have a look at what do you want to do if you don't want to apply your master to your page. But before we move further to that, I want to add one more very useful thing that usually is held inside the master pages, which is our lovely page number. Especially when dealing with magazine and book, we want to make sure that we have a placeholder that automatically updates the number of pages. We don't want to do that manually. It could drive us crazy. So what I'm going to do here is to click the type tool, located on the toolbars, this big T, and that will activate the type tool. And then all I have to do here is to click and drag in order to create a text frame. And then I'm going to head to my type menu at the top and scroll down until insert special character and select markers and then current page number and just simply click. And as you can see, InDesign has created a letter A, which stands for, is just a placeholder for your current page. And you can start to style it a little bit if you want by heading to the properties panel. And in this case, I'm just going to do something very simple, which is align it to the center, just like so. Also, perhaps I'm going to bring it to the very top. And I wanted to show you something quite cool with the actual layout and the guides. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to the properties and make sure that it's also aligned. And if you click on the very first icon, you can make sure that you align it to the margin, just to respect the larger margin that we had there. Fantastic. And I just give it a little bit of space, usually, just to make sure that if we have larger numbers, or if we decide to, I don't know, get to up to whatever, 100 pages is actually, we have room for it. So try not to make it too tight. So try to take in consideration numbers with 2, 3, 4 dials if you might need to use them. Right, so the cool things that I wanted to show you is to head back now under your layout and under your margin and columns. And as you can see, I have placed now the page number just below my margin. I'm just going to hide the layout so you can actually see it real quick. And probably that was a very good reminder that we want to set these on a different layer. So again, I'm going to create a new layer, call it page number, click on OK. And then I'm going to actually show you real quick how to move one item from one layers to the other. Now, make sure that you open the layer so you can drag it up. That's very particular with InDesign rather than the other apps. You want to make sure that you click on a down pointing arrow so your layers is open and you can drag the content. As you can see, I moved that right away from the layout into the page number layer. So now we can hide the layout and we can just see our grid and our page number sitting at the very bottom of our layout here. Here it is. So the reason why I've done that is because now, and I always double check that I'm in my master, I can head back into my layout, margin and columns, and I can move my bottom margin to 25 again. So what it's doing here is basically automatically giving me a 5 millimeter space between the pages, which I know right now that they're sitting exactly at 20 millimeter from the bottom. But I'm automatically creating another box, which is our margin, that allows some breathing space between the end of the content, and it's going to limit our text so it doesn't run into my pages. And now I can click on OK, and that's the beauty of being able to always modify your content. And here it is. And if you really want to be super precise, you can head back to your layout and just fix your frames. So now we know that our text is not going to go ahead and touch and interfere with our page number. Again, that's totally up to you because those, again, layout frames are just as a placeholder. We're not going to use it for our printed page. And I'm going to double click in order to come back into our pages right now. And as you can see, we have this master applied to all our pages. And this page, which is supposed to be our pages number 1, because we have a cover, and then we have the real introductory page over here. It looks like it's page number 3, but I really want that to be my page number 1. So first thing that we want to do is to make sure that we don't apply this master to the main cover. In order to do so, head to the None master and simply click and drag it into the cover. And as you can see, we don't have the master applied, so nothing is going to show while you're retaining the other pages with the A master applied. But what if we want now change this into 3? Because this is still page number 3. We want to change into page number 1. Right-click into your pages from the little icon and make sure that you can create number and section option by right-clicking on the page and then accessing the new section. You can click now Start Section and click on Start Page Numbering at whatever you want. In this case, we want this to be page number 1. Click on OK. And now let's go back and look at here. We finally have our introduction page, which is page number 1. Beautiful. So we're pretty much ready to bring in our content. So if you have downloaded the content, now make sure also to hit Command Save or Control Save if you're following along, just so we can save all the edits and all the work that we've done so far. Before bringing in the content, I'm going to create 2 different layers, one for the images and one for the text, or we don't have to do so. You can just create one and call it content for now. And then if we need so, we can split it afterwards. Here it is. And I'm going to click on OK. And we really want to make sure that the contents always sits on top because we don't want it to be hidden. Remember, the order of the layers does matter, as in every Creative Cloud document. Right. So all we have to do now is to use the shortcut Command D, which is that place shortcut. You can also find the same instruction under the file menu here at the top in order to place any content we want. In this particular occasion, I'm looking first to start with the text. And let's see, hopefully I have downloaded here. No, it's probably in the folder that I've shared.
And I said at the start, I am far from an InDesign expert. I'm kind of a bit of a newbie with this particular software, but you're making this so accessible, Kladi. I have to say, like, this is super clear for me. And
I'm happy because I'm running so far. I'm really conscious of the time. I really want to get to the point when I show you the wow moment. So make sure to watch it till the end, because if you're just starting with InDesign and this is overwhelming, but that's where you want to get to, stick around, because it's always very useful to see what InDesign is capable of, and you can start planning what your next step will be. But if you want to start, I do have a course in LinkedIn Learning, which is a quick start to InDesign. So that covers the very basics of print publishing and online publishing. So maybe at the end we can have a look at that real quick as well. So there are two ways in which we can bring files. Place is usually the safer one, although since I think a couple years you can simply drag and drop any text file. You don't need to have Word, even if you don't have Microsoft Word. Doesn't matter. All you need is simply to drag and drop, or simply place your text here using the shortcut Command D or Control D if you're from a PC, and click on Open in order to bring up your text. In here, InDesign is telling me that we don't have the font. It doesn't really matter. We're going to style it our own way. So we can just click on Skip, and actually that will be a fantastic occasion to see how InDesign behave when we don't have the correct font. Now I'm going to zoom in into my cursor, and as you can see, we can already start to read the text because it's been loaded into our selection. So all you have to do is to click and drag in order to create a text box that will contain our text. And here it is. Now, as you can see, everything is underlined in this pink color, salmon pink, and also as a background. And no worries, that's just InDesign saying, hey, I don't have this font, we need to do something about it. So usually what I will do here, just as a very, very first start, so we don't get bothered by the underline option, is to head into our properties. And there is usual and normal, which is a basic style for InDesign. And I'm going to head under text style, paragraph style, and click on normal in order to apply the normal style to our text. Or something else that you can do as well is to create a different text just simply by selecting a character. All I'm trying to say in here is that it doesn't really matter what sort of style you apply. Basic paragraph is also something that allows you just to create what happened here? I think I deleted everything by mistake. I'm just going to press Command Z. If that happened to you, just Command Z allows you to to go back as any other application. That's an undo. But the main idea was here to just basically don't have a style and set everything to the basic paragraph. So we can start from scratch, and we make sure that InDesign is not stressing out, is using whatever font you have available, and that's all we need for now. Then another thing that I'm going to do, and that's I usually do when I work with documents here, is to sort of zoom in and have a read to understand what this document is all about. I'm going to click on the double arrow here to hide the layer panel, so we can just really focus here on the text. So I can see that there is an heading and then a second line, which is usually a subheading, then what looks like the main text, and then a quotation at the end. And probably need to give it a little space here between I and I admit. So what I usually do, I usually treat the quotations as a different part of a text. So what I'm going to do here is to click and select it and press Command C to copy and delete it from here. And then you can simply go back to your selection tool and press Command V to paste it into a separate into a separate text box, and as you can see, automatically creates a new text box. And I'm just going to leave it here for now. By the way, if you ever, oops, hey Siri, we don't need you.
That happens all the time.
If you ever see this little plus red icon popping up here, it means that you have overset text. So there is text that is hiding. In order to show it right away, click on your text box and use the Option Command C. That's Alt Control C on a Windows, in order to make sure that we expand automatically and fit the frame to the text. Right, so here we have the main chunk of text and also the quotation here. You can use this text and keep it there just as a reference and maybe create a copy, or you can start editing directly this text over here. In order to copy, again, like we were doing with the image, make sure that you hold an Option, click and drag, and you're just going to create a copy. And this is just to have an idea of how I want to overlay the text, just like so. I'm just going to overlay it in the image, just to have an idea of having here maybe the first title and then the other text. And before time is crushing us, I want to make sure that we also bring in the images, so we can have an idea of how to introduce the images as well. I really use and leverage the power of the Creative Cloud libraries. Again, if you do not find this panel, it lives under Window. Make sure that you select CC Libraries here. And you can create a new library that is dedicated to this project. And I'm going to call it Design Assets. And then click on Create to create your new library. And then from here, I'm going to head into whatever folder you have downloaded your images. You can use your own. You can use the one that I've provided. And hopefully they are on my desktop under the covered folder here. Here we are. Those are the images that I'm going to use. And all I have to do is simply select them from my folder and drag them inside the libraries. And once you let go, you can see that they are loading and they're there, ready to be used, and they're sitting in my libraries. Fantastic. So I'm just going to show you real quick how to bring one of these images in. And to do so, we're going to go back and use the rectangle frame. So the rectangle frame works as a placeholder, pretty much like a text frame, but its purpose is to hold images. And I'm going to use this little square that I sort of already imagined as a placeholder for my images, as a place where I know that my image is going to go there. And you can feel free to choose whatever image you prefer. In this case, I'm just going to pick one of the images that I prepared. And you can click and drop it once. Again, you can, click and drag from the libraries, and then click it inside the frame, and it will be automatically inserted inside the frame. Now, it looks like this image is pretty big for my frame. Make sure that you have your frame selected and use the shortcut Shift Option Command E to fit your image inside your frame. Now, make sure that you really use the Shift key. If you just use the Option Command E, it will distort it. I'm just going to show you real quick. So it will fit it to the frame, but it will just sort of squish it. So we want to make sure that we hold Shift while we use Shift Option Command E. That's Shift Alt Control E on a Mac in order to fit our image. And then there is a sort of little eye popping up that tells that there is the image inside the frame. And if we click on it, we can sort of like zoom in on our trackpad, pretty much like we do on a phone, or use the bounding box in order to stretch the image. So we can actually move the image around inside the frame by double-clicking inside the frame, just like so. It looks like it needs to be a little bit smaller. And here we go. You can find the right proportion. So we don't see the background, but the image also is fitted nicely. And you can do the same with the other page. So let's go ahead and create another frame that goes, again, from the bleeds to the middle of the page. And I recommend, no matter how much of a pro you are, to zoom in, really, really zoom in to make sure that you are hitting the middle spot here of your margin whenever you create your frame. It looks like I let go. If you did what I did, so basically let go before creating the frame, no harm, go back into your little frame tool, and let's create a new frame over here. And again, all we have to do is to click and drag in order to bring in the frame. Oh, that's what happened. I was on a different page. Fantastic. We can do that again. So let's do this again in the current page over here. It looks like I zoomed in quite a tad. Fantastic. Again, Shift Option Command E to fit it into the frame. And something cool that I wanted to show you, that I have many people ask me, is how to create a rounded corner. Like all these arches and rounded corner are so popular right now. In order to activate a rounded corner in frames in InDesign, all you have to do is to click here where it says click on edit corner, is this little yellow box. And once you click, you're going to have these little diamonds sitting at the corner, and simply drag them in order to create these lovely corners here. Probably that's a little bit too much. And of course, in this case, if you're opting for this sort of framed and not for a full bleed image, you can perhaps use the margin as a guideline, just so you sort of fit the content. And then you can resize your image as well, so it just fit nicely inside your rounded corner. And you can do the same with any sort of size of images. Here we are. So we created like a little bit of a modern look with no sharp edges. I think that's something that is very, very popular in both design and photography at the moment. Right, here we are. So I'm going to head back to my layers and hide the layout so we can start to have a look of the sort of progress. And another very important shortcut that we want to learn in InDesign is the letter W. The letter W allows you to toggle between your preview mode, which shows you the grid, the normal mode, sorry, which shows you the grid, and the preview, which is give you an idea of where we're at with our final production of the document. So you can quickly toggle simply by clicking the letter W.
That's so useful. It's like in Photoshop, I always hit F repeatedly,
Yes.
so you can get rid of all the distractions and just see the outcome.
Absolutely. And InDesign has this wonderful also shortcut that I use many times if clients come in and I don't want to show how messy my border around the file are. Usually I make copies of a lot of stuff because I'm afraid of losing and content behind, or maybe messing some part of the content. So another amazing, super quick shortcut that allows you to go right away in presentation mode is Shift W. So with Shift W, you move right away into presentation. So even if you have a meeting, you don't have a time to create a PDF to present your file, Shift W will do to create a very nice, full-on, full bleed image of your final production. Right, it's time to jump into the text. I'm gonna start to go quite speedy, and probably what I'll do is to show you how to style the text and then move on to a file that I already prepared so I can show you some extra magic afterwards. But right, so what I did here is to move my text box so you can see that, you know, we can start to place it here if that's where the final destination is. But we're gonna start to build 2 columns in just a second, just to provide a little bit of space to our introduction, because I just wanted to make it a full bleed. You can do that in one single frame. I'm going to show you how to do that. Just by pressing Command B, you will split your text frame into different columns. In this case, we can move in 2 columns and click on Preview. And as you can see, the gutter is here as well. So we want to make sure that we set it to the same gutter that we set our margin, so 3 millimeters, and then click on OK. And we're going to use this for now. And then it doesn't really matter up to where you stretch your little text frame here. All I care is that the middle here is sort of sits within our margin. So it looks like I'm almost there. Probably need to drag it a little bit more outside. And again, this might be a little bit more unconventional, but I'm going to show you why I'm working in this way. You don't have to. We can talk about working on a more standard with maybe 2 different boxes. But I really love to use my space before and space after. I'm a really big freak in controlling the layout, because I like to having a very nice and balanced page, and I want to be able to also editing everything on the go without having too many moving parts. And what I'm talking about right here are paragraph styles. They allow you to create a style and control it at any point of your production, and by just simply modifying your paragraph style, you'll be able to modify the entire document. But let's see how you build your paragraph style. So first thing to do is to select the text that you want to style, add under Properties, and then you can start to select the text. Now, the text that I'm going to use here is called Active Grotesque Extended, so is EX, and I'm going to go for the extra bold. Now, I had planned to talk broadly about both Adobe Font and Adobe Stock. The website are stock.adobe.com for Adobe Stock and font.adobe.com for fonts. In this case, the fonts that I'm going to be using, feel free to go and have a browse in your own time. They're amazing, and they're service that comes with your Creative Cloud subscription. I use a lot font packs. font packs are amazing fonts that are created by other designers. I love this one. I love Sans because I'm a bit of a sans serif font, but that's, we can have an entire hour talking about fonts. And the one that I'm using in particular is the one created by a designer for an Adobe Live. And I just want to make sure that I just pointed out to you is this one here, for documentation with Adobe Live. So it sits at page 3 of the font collection here under font packs. And you'll find a series of fonts. If you see view pack, you'll be able to activate your fonts directly from this page simply by clicking, see, that's the Grotext Extra Bold that I'm using. Click on view family, and you can go ahead and activate the fonts simply by clicking here on the activate the fonts. It will be automatically updated on your Creative Cloud. So accessible on any sort of app within the Creative Cloud. And for the images that I'm using, I just wanted to give a shout out to the amazing stock team that has prepared a library for me for the Printmysoul, Kladi from Printmysoul collection for Macs. So you can see all these images that I'm using and some of the ones that are made available here, both into this vector and image format. And you can find all of them under iamkladi.com. There is a Macs page. And at the very bottom, you can find these 2 little collections here from Adobe Stock.
Beautiful. Right. It's like the nicest looking Pinterest board.
Yes, absolutely. I was so grateful because they basically done the mood boards for me right away for our Mac section. Right. So we realized how to find the font. You can also browse it from the character panel by clicking here on the little down pointing arrow. When you click on Find More, that's another way of accessing Adobe Font. As you can see from this little cloud here, that's another way of activating live your font. So if the font is ticked, it means that it's activated. If it's got an X, you can deactivate it. And if it doesn't have an X, you can actually download it live and activate it right away. So I'm happy with my Activewear test. Probably going to give it a size of 22. And that's why I wanted to show you why it's so important to have these 2 different boxes so we can actually stretch this to the very end of the box. And let's see how we do that once we create our paragraph style. So I already give it a size and give it a font. Those are pretty good basics to start and creating a paragraph style. Let's head here under text style and click on the create new to create a new paragraph style. And we can name it from here. We can name it heading or title as you prefer, and click on return to make sure that your little name sits there. Then if you click on the paragraph style option, you can open the paragraph style panel, which, as every other panel, lives also under the window menu. And here it is. You can access your paragraph style here at any time, and you can make any changes you wanted in terms of font. And what is most important here also is the indents and spacing, which is the spacing between different paragraphs. So in this case, I'm going to give it a space after of 5. And as you can see, it moves right away everything that is in another paragraph style down of 5 millimeters. Now, the reason why I wanted to show these really cool things with the two different columns is because I want to show you how to force a paragraph style to extend, because we want the title to run across. We don't want the title to be broken and running over the text, at least for this example. So I'm going to go ahead and click under the tab option, the span columns option over here towards the bottom. You want to make sure that the paragraph layout spans columns, and you can span it to all columns. And as you can see, now all my title is going to go nice and broadly all over our content, just like so. And then you can click on OK. And something that I wanted to show you here also is that you can go ahead and create a paragraph style starting backwards. So you can first style your text and then create a paragraph style. Or another way is to first create a paragraph style. So in this case, click on the little add a new paragraph style option first, and then we can name it. In this case, we're going to create our subheading. And then you can style it, and then you can apply it to your text. So it works both ways. So in this case, I'm going to use a font called Freight Pro Bold, which is a very nice contrast with our nice and bold graphics. I tend to use fonts that are usually quite in contrast with each other. So as you can see here, and make sure to click on preview so you can see the changes happening live right away. We have a sans serif font, which is nice, a nice display. And then we have a more a serif font here, just to create that nice balance and the nice movement, basically, so it's not boring. It just keeps the eyes entertained, and it creates movement in the eyes. So it just kind of sort of challenge to move through. And then here also I'm going to go into the indent spacing and give it a little bit less of a space after, because we want to make a difference. Remember what I was talking about, proximity and the gestalt. We want to create more space between items that have different meanings. So of course the heading has to really stand out, so we're going to give it more space. And between the subheading and the actual content, the body copy, we're going to give a little bit less space, so it just sort of sits nicely together. So I know that that subheading connects to that text, and so on, where we're going to move on into our rest of the book. Now click on OK to apply this style, and we're left just with styling our body copy. So I'm just going to do that very quick by clicking on the new paragraph style, name it body copy. And then I'm going to head again into our basic format. And I'm going to use something similar to the previous one, which is, again, an active grotesque. But I'm going to make sure not to use an expanded, because otherwise you can see it just gets quite too big. And I'm going to give it a size of 10. Now, I'm not a big fan of hyphenation, especially because I work on a smaller format. So you want to make sure that you use something that allows to be readable. And I don't think that, breaking... When you have less than 9 words on a single column, I think you can afford to have them without having a break in space. Of course, if you have long text and long moving pages, then please go ahead and use the hyphenation. And for those of you who don't know what hyphenation is, it's simply the breaking of a word. So head under the hyphenation options and click on deactivate the hyphenate. And as you can see, it does right away bring down the hyphenation. And I think we're pretty much done here. I'm going to click on OK, and you can see that we have our text nicely styled. Missing a little bit of color.
Beautiful.
I'm going to show you real quick. I got 3 more things to show. I'm going to jump into the other file. So I just want to show how to apply the colors, and then the little wow moment we can have a look in the other file that is already a little bit further than this. So what I wanted to show you about the color here is if you actually click on the color picker, the first option is the color theme tool, which allows you to lift a color theme from any image that is inside the document. So all you have to do is to click on this super magic tool, click once on the image, and it loads automatically all the wonderful palette that belongs to the image. Isn't that, I say, mind-blowing?
That is pretty amazing.
Yeah, 2 options here. You can add that to your swatches by clicking on this first icon. So if we head under window and we select our, I believe it's under color, oops, and then swatches, you can see that right away, if we click here on this icon, all the colors get loaded under our swatches panel. But even more mind-blowing, since we created and we've been so organized of creating a CC libraries, we can add the color theme right away to our CC library, and here it is. So it's nice and accessible at all times. And now we can head back to our paragraph style. And again, we don't need to select the text when we're working with paragraph style. And all we have to do is to make sure that our text box is not selected. Otherwise, look what happened. Everything turns into whatever paragraph style we have selected. So just click away anywhere into your document to deselect your text. And now double click inside your heading, head under character color, and we can start to apply the color right away here. Here it is. So just go ahead and do the same for all the other paragraph, just like so. I thought that was definitely worth of showing because it's super cool. Before we jump into our document, just another thing, besides the character style, it comes with a sister panel, paragraph style. It comes with a sister panel, which is the character style, which allows you to override the styling of a paragraph style. So let's go ahead and select the text and assign a paragraph style. And as you can see, it's the same here as the subheading, but we want to tweak it a little. We just want it to have a little different. So make sure that you select your text box and then head to the character style and create a new character style. I'm going to call it quotation. And in this case, we can make, for example, the character smaller. So let's say I'm just going to give it a size of 10, which is probably too small, but you get the gist. You can basically start from that character style and then override it and make changes without having to go through the entire process of starting your file. And as promised, I'm going to jump into a little bit more refined document. Hopefully I can open it from here. Let's see if I've been organized enough. And oops, looks like it's the starter file that we're playing from. So that's a little bit more a polished look. I just took a little bit more of time selecting the fonts. And there is one thing that probably just gets your eyes right away, which is this image that it looks like it is almost cut out. Well, that's an amazing new feature of InDesign. And by the way, as you can see, the image is below the text. To access any whatever subject that is or object that is under another object in InDesign, you make sure that you select your selection tool, which is the black arrow, and then hit Command and click. And that will allow you to select right away the box that is underneath. So I've seen so many students moving things around in order to select this one. You don't have to do so. Just click on Command and click, and right away you bounce into the image that is below. So
that's amazing.
In order to wrap the text, we want to use the little text wrap panel. And then by selecting your image, so here I've done exactly like before, just brought in an image. Actually, you just put in an image from the library or place it from any other folder. And with the text wrap menu, we want to click onto the third icon to wrap around object and shape. But usually what happens is that is set to bounding box. That's how InDesign used to look like. So we basically have the text that moves around the entire image. With the revolutionary artificial intelligence apply, which is Adobe Sensei, apply to InDesign, allows you to use, which pretty much is used very commonly, and I'm sure you've seen ASUS using it very often in Photoshop, which is select subject. So we have access to the contour option type. Make sure to click on the drop down corner here and click on select subject. And once you do so, you can see that InDesign automatically wraps around the subject, create vector points that you can actually modify if you wish as well. But I'm quite happy with this result. I also advise to give it a little bit of space. That's completely up to you. I stick everything to 3 millimeters because that's the rule that we established ourselves for this document between any graphics or any elements and another. So 3 millimeters I stick also for the images. And here it is. This is an amazing feature to wrap a text around an object. And you can see that the text just follows nicely the image, despite the background and the actual box being a rectangular. And the very, very last thing, sorry, Tom, I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I wish you could stay for even longer. This is so value packed, Kladi. It's amazing.
That's too cool not to mention is Next Style. And I want to know in the chat, let me know, Tom, please, while I work, if anyone has ever used Next Styles. So what I'm going to do here real quick, I'm going to bring back the text, and we're just going to imagine, that is a different text. So just like we did before, let's style it over here and just go back and give it just a basic style so it all looks nice and plain. And just bring it back to whatever position we added at the beginning. So from the top here. Now, all you need to do once you create your neat paragraph styles is to head to your paragraph style little menu, which you can find under styles and then paragraph styles. And when you double click on and access your paragraph styles, there is an option that we didn't look into before, which is the general options. That's where you give the name to your style, but also you select your next style. Now, bear in mind that you need to have a style created in order to select it. So as we did before, we have our normal, subheading, and body copy. So I want that anytime that I have a heading style, it will be followed by a subheading. That means that whenever there is a new paragraph, they will be styled on a subheading. And of course, I'm going to do the same for the subheading. I want that after any other subheading, there is, of course, a body copy. So here from their general, select body copy, and then click on OK. Now, the majority of people think that happens right away. They will be very annoying if every time that you style something, automatically style in something else. Again, we want to have control in what we're doing. So that happens only when we select the text box. And then when applying the very first style, we got to right click on it. And instead of simply applying the style, which what happens when we click on it, when we right click and select apply heading next style, we tell InDesign exactly what we want. And look what happens here. I exactly have everything that we spent so much time styling before right away happening into our document. So we have our heading followed by our subheading, followed about our body copy. So that means that you got to style your text only once, and then you can repeat it over and over again into your document by using this amazing feature of InDesign.
So smart.
And I think that I
Wow.
pretty much went over the best things that I wanted to show you. I can talk for a day.
I love it. Honestly, you've got such a natural skill in teaching and such a passion for it. And that was beyond value packed. So thank you so, so much, Kladi. Yeah, I appreciate how much you've shared today.
Very, very exciting.
Incredible. I mean, so many of the design cutters watching live are saying this is the best InDesign session they've ever attended. So let's give it up for Kladi in the chat. Huge thank you, because she's been so generous with her time today.
Thank you so much.
Again, Kladi, I'm blown away. What a fantastic first session. I especially want you to click through to her Instagram right now. So I am Kladi at Instagram. I want you to drop a follow and support her, because she puts some incredible work out.
I was just going to say, sorry to interrupt you, that's perhaps the best way to get me. I have a lot of questions coming up, usually on my Instagram, and I do a lot of Instagram lives to reply to the questions. So hit me up on Instagram. Super happy to reply to your questions there. And thank you so much, everybody, for your love. And thank you so much, Tom, for having me. It's been absolutely amazing. As you can see, I can talk for hours.
I love it, though. You were amazing. So thank you, Kladi. We would love to have you back in the future. The community loved that entire session. You really, really over-delivered, and we just appreciate you a ton. So thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.